want to see the live chat, though, I can minimize this, right? I can minimize this. I want to see the live chat. Okay. They'll do. Welcome, everybody. I'm Eugene Edwards over here, and that's Dr. Dylan Caligiuri right over there. Well, it's actually his stand-in. Dylan's not feeling well, y'all. So it's a solo show. It's a one-man thing, and hopefully you can hear me, see me. And I want to welcome you. I'm so used to doing this in the plural, you know. Today's a deep dive on Neon Moon by Brooks Dunn. I'll be fielding. Hey, yeah, I made it. There we have. Oh, yeah. Pabs Pizzou from Melbourne, Australia. I'd like to go back to Melbourne. Where did I play there, Pabs? At the what's the theater that's right by the water? Is that the Palace in Melbourne? I believe so. You know the one. Anyway, so we're doing a deep dive on this song. This was like a number one for Brooks and Dunn back in 1992. Oh, hi, Rex. And hey, buddy. And I was playing in the country clubs when, yes, I'm doing the royal we. That's right, Dave. Thank you. This song came out. It was a beautiful little tune, simple song, right? Just like a 1-4-5. And it's a cowboy cha-cha. The rhythm's great. It's got that clave. We'll talk about that a little bit. And it's got just a really great guitar solo by Brent Mason, famed session guitar player Brent Mason, and we're going to walk through that as well. Just a real quick thing, though. You know, this song was written by just Dunn, and Ronnie Dunn. He wrote it, I think, before they were put together as a duo. He'd already written it. He was in I think he was in Tulsa, playing the clubs, thinking about the dancers. Right to the dance floor. That's always a good tip, man. Write something that people can dance to, and you're likely going to, at least it's going to increase your chances of having a hit, right? And a beautiful lyric about just kind of having a heartache, sitting in a bar probably. But then there's always a little bit of hope, and that's pretty key. That's a great thing about this song. And also something that's, I think is, a lot of people don't notice this, came out in 1992. It was a number one for many weeks that year. And the song never had a video. They didn't make a big production video for it at the time, and apparently that was by choice. Brooks and Dunn just figured, once you make a video of something, everyone's going to see the same bar. They're going to picture the video, and they kept it vague. Everyone kind of sees it's so evocative. They just didn't feel that they need the video, and they didn't because it was a number one anyway. So take that, video industry. No. If you have any questions about this song or about how it's played, make sure you get it in the chat there. I have my, Dylan has lost a tremendous amount of weight. He's lost so much, his body is semi-hollow. I'm leaving a little gap there for what I assume is laughter and applause. So, anyway, so let's talk about the rhythm of this thing. It's really based on this, the clave, kind of the Bo Diddley thing, sort of. And let's talk and that bass line. And the bass line is pretty fundamental to a lot of music. And so this is for you bass players out there. A lot of you bass players, you probably already know this line, but this is a type of bass line that just kind of works universally. And what's great is that you play the root, you play the major third, and you play the fifth. And that's all you need. Now you play it in that rhythm. So we're in the key of A, so it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you just follow that through all the chords. So open A, 4th fret A, 2nd fret D. That's your 1, 3, 5 over an A chord. And then when it goes to the 4 chord of D, just repeat it. It's 1, 3, 5. Go back to 1, 3, 5 in A. Play it open or fret it. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm a bit libertarian on that. You do it over the 5 chord as well. Then I'm doing half a decent job. Thank you, Dylan. Great. Now I got to deal with him in there. He's already inside my head. You think he'd cut me a break? Anyway, then that's the verse basically. It's just 1, 4, and 5. Then there's that walk up to the 4 chord for the chorus. Now, I've played the song in the clubs over the years. In fact, I was playing country music clubs full time by 1992. So I remember this song coming out. There's a beautiful move to go from this A to the 4 chord of D here. And it happens on the G and B string. So both of them on the 2nd fret. And then frets 4 and 3, respectively. Then 5 and 4. So just go chromatically. Then 6 and 5. So. And then play your D major chord. It's a really, really nice, smooth walk up, a little bit of a chromatic movement there. 4 chord, 5 chord. Brent Mason does this little sus. But I also want to point out something that whenever I'm playing this in the club, Bruce Bouton plays the pedal steel on this record, and he has this line in the chorus between the 4 chord and the 5 chord that I can't get out of my head. It's so distinctive to me that I sometimes try and peel it off on the guitar, and I kind of think of coming out like a D shape E, but way up at the 16th and 17th frets, where my intonation's not so great. But what I play is this here. Let's see if I can get this. Yeah. I'm sorry. So there's my so I'm doing is I'm coming off the 16th to 14th fret on the high E string, but I also have the 17th fret of the B string ready to go, so I get a nice little major second overlap. Because on a pedal steel, you'd get that interval with 2 strings. And then 16th fret of the G. Slide down the 14th fret of the G, which kind of gives us that sus move that Brent Mason gives us on his telly. And then I find myself E major triad here out of my E shape E at the 12th fret. And then I slide down to my D major triad at the 10th fret out of my E shape. And then the part that Brent Mason plays over the verse is really great. People ask, so if you're a lead guitar player, what do you play during the verse, right? You can't just... So instead of strumming the chord, what we hear is this really beautiful pizzicato part. So this is really 2nd fret G, that's our A note, that's our root note. And then we hear 4th fret, 2nd fret on the D string, which is scale-wise our 6th and 5th note of the scale. I'm palm muting. So it's really just 3 notes out of the A major scale, and he really, really makes a meal out of it. And, doesn't interrupt the vocal in any way. And then when it goes to the 4 chord, he just sticks with that pattern. I tend to stay in first position, so I play over the D chord. Same thing, the root note of your chord, then the 6th of your chord, and the 5th of your chord. And then there's that great, real smooth, that lick. It's frets 2, 3, 4 on the A string, and then 2nd fret on the G. Blue. So this is really great parts playing by Brent Mason, by the way. And we have a really well-written song. I'm sure, these studio guys, they heard this song, they recognize a good thing, and notice how no one really gets in the way of it. No one really flat out shows off. They just let the vocal take center stage, and for good reason. Let's see. I'm going to look in the chat, see if there's any. Let's see. Yes, yes, Dylan. Everyone's saying get well. So I guess you see them in the chat, don't you? All right. Bruce Richard, I'm glad you tuned in and catch us. If there's anything inside of this broadcast for the next 15 minutes or so that you have a specific question about the guitar, just ask. But obviously, it's a very clean tone with some compression, I would imagine, that Brent Mason has. And I can only assume he's using that primer gray Telecaster with like all sorts of pickups and different settings. It sounds very, very much like a Stratocaster. It's probably why I brought this today. Dylan, I hope you don't have to. Oh yeah, Mary Lee wasn't feeling well. I think Dylan. I don't know what's wrong with Dylan. There you go. But yeah, as long as I'm still doing a half decent job, you know. So that's what the guy's doing on the verse. And take note, if you're writing a song of your own, or again, I would say if a friend's bringing over a song and trying to figure out what to do, if you're playing electric guitar and they're strumming their acoustic, just find kind of a nice subtle thing to do underneath them, maybe that outlines the chord changes, and just think Neon Moon. Think of what Brent Mason's doing. There's worse ideas. Great. Fantastic. Now the solo. This is a great example of where he starts off with outlining the vocal melody of the verse. The solo just happens over the verse, right? So it just happens over the 1 chord, the 4 chord, then it goes back to the 1. And it mostly happens on the G and B strings. In fact, I think almost the whole solo happens there. And so we know the melody is na 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 na, right? That's the vocal melody. So that's what we're gonna play. We'll bend the G, kind of a whole step bend from the 4th fret, and then we'll fret the 2nd fret of the B. So that's a typical country thing where we bend a string up to a note, and then right when we achieve that pitch, we just fret that same note on the adjacent string. And then half bend coming out. But that's a very, very guitaristic way of relaying the melody. Otherwise, it's... that's good. But let's get ornamental about this, huh? So again, we're doing that bend up to the major third. Then we're going to move up to the 4th chord, the 4 chord here, and Brent Mason does this really beautiful way of scaling up in double stops. So that's 6 and 5 on the G and B strings. Which, if you need to, for context, that's basically what they would be if you're playing an E-shape A major chord. Ooh, I'm out of tune already. So there's that. Then that same shape is going to move up to frets 9 and 8. Now this is great because what he's done here, this note, this G natural at the 8th fret of the B string, is the flat 7 of A. So it's sort of like he just sort of insinuates an A dominant chord here, an A7 chord, to voice lead to the 4 chord. It would be the equivalent of, which is very, very classic chord changes, right? To voice lead to the 4 chord, but he does that via this double stop. Then he goes up to frets 11 and 10 on these 2 strings, which of course is what they would be if you're playing an E-shaped D major chord, our 4 chord. So here again, just in kind. And then that. You play both of those strings on the 12th fret. Now that gives us almost this really beautiful modal Latin feel in a way, right? Because we hear that G natural again, but this time over the 4 chord. And then go back to fret 7. That's beautiful. Part of a D chord, if you will. Resolving back to the A major where we are. And then one last, just to make sure we're country. So what's that? That is, use the pinky to play the B string at the 5th fret. And then my ring finger, 4th fret G string. And this is a beautiful pedal steel bend sort of thing. Double stop bend where I'm going to bend the G, but the B string is going to stay stationary. And then we're back, and the vocal comes back in. Let's see here. Anybody have any questions about the solo? Put them in the chats. And let's see. And does anybody want to bet the over and under on how out of tune I am at this point? Not too bad. By the way, this is a good lesson. I didn't think about it. This is not a stop. This is not a hardtail Strat, by the way. I just didn't put the tremolo on. But as some of you Strat players know, if you've got a floating bridge and you try doing double stop bends, look out, because you'll bend one string, but when you do that, the other strings move out of tune because the bridge is going to start moving around. This is why a lot of people do stick with tellies for that sort of stuff, and I just wasn't thinking ahead there. Actually, there you go. Brent Mason plays a Telecaster with a regular Telecaster bridge, but then he has Strat-like pickup settings. Clever. So Eileen saying, could you play a bit of the song so we get a sense of how the whole fits together if we don't know it? Sure. So I'm sorry, I just don't know. I don't have the lyrics in front of me here, but it's sun is down in my part of town. Lonesome feeling. Then it goes for. Short version goes to the 5 chord. As long as there's light in the neon moon. Then the chorus. If you're coming for the lonely, if you're coming for the lonely, the knees of the neon moon. There's no bridge. That's the whole thing. I mean, I wouldn't even say that there's a lift to the chorus. It just kind of goes right to the chorus. So the structure of this song is really, really, really simple because it doesn't need to be elaborated upon. Pardon the preposition. Scott saying, if you put the bridge to the body, there's a big heart there. Well, okay. So if the bridge is kind of locked down. You could call it blocked, usually is the term for that, which means no use putting your tremolo on there, right? This is for Strat owners, or any guitar with a floating bridge, really. Then I'm not gonna say, well, yes, it does help it keep it in tune. By the way, this is why, when they developed them when the Floyd Rose thing, but having the locking unit here. They developed that by the late 70s, early 80s, because people were just using the tremolo bar so heavily for dive bomb effects, Van Halen style, what have you. And let's watch any of those Jimi Hendrix bootlegs or concert footage, and he's just tuning constantly between songs because there was just no way around that. And they developed a way to lock it here. That way it would keep the strings in tune. But in general, if you get a Stratocaster or anything with a floating bridge that has a tremolo bar, and if you don't have a locking system here, your tuning is going to be a little tenuous. What I'm referring to, though, is when you do, let's say I'm doing a steel bend, like a triple stop bend. So here. You'll actually hear on the 12th fret, I'm playing the B and E strings, and I'm not bending them at all. I'm only bending the G, but you'll hear the pitch of those strings start to move around a little bit. They start to move around a little bit on you. So it's not, and by the way, that was just a compromise that Leo made when he developed a Strat, right? Like before that, there were tellies. And guys were doing these sorts of pedal steel bends or steel bends. And he says, well, if we put a tremolo on there, we can do these nice little sliding moves. We'll use the bar. Can't do it that way, but they figured it was a compromise. So some people just stuck with the telly for that. Other people just learned how to use a tremolo bar in a way that moved all the strings at once, which kind of emulated using a slide, basically. My guitar, Marilee says, my guitar guy my guitar setup guy calls it slamming the bridge. There you go, just slam that down. But that's it there. So I'm trying to think if there's or decking. Yes, there you go. See, everyone's got their term. All I know is that this is. Yeah, see, I'm out of tune, guys. So, by the way, after this, I'll be conducting the workshop for the developing guitarist. I should have mentioned that at the beginning there. So that's still happening for about an hour. We're going to go through a bunch of stuff. If you're waiting for us there, I'll be there really, really soon. There will not be a workshop next week, but what is happening next week here on the YouTubes, we're going to have our special guest, Angela Petrelli, is going to come back. It's been almost like a year, I think, since she's been here. It's been way too long, and we'll spend like an hour with her here on the YouTube show. Okay, so no workshop. It'll just be us and Angela going over some of her favorite licks and some little gear tips and what have you. Last time she was here, we kind of treated it like as an interview, kind of a biography of her life sort of thing. But this time I think we're just going to kind of just bear down on actual playing techniques and some things. She's going to have tons of tips and tricks. And, she plays so many guitars at Norm's Rare Guitars. If you follow Norm's feed, she's there all the time. If you have general questions about different types of guitars, now would be a good time to ask, but she's constantly playing different acoustics and different types of electrics, vintage and new. So there you go. So yay, Angie. Make sure you circle that on your and she also said, she's sat in for me as a co-host here, so she's comfortable here. You guys make her feel comfortable. She's dynamite. And anyway, that's my real quick deep dive on Neon Moon by Brooks Dunn. I'm just gonna look at my notes here to see if I've missed anything. Oh, by the way, another good example in this guitar solo, I just want to mention, notice how much time Brent Mason puts between his phrases. He's not just doing 16th note runs for a few measures here. There's these bite-sized phrases, which makes it really conversational, makes it easier to learn, by the way, because you can learn the solo phrase by phrase. And then listen to the pauses. Listen how much, if you will, listen to how much he breathes on this solo. So there's a really brief pause there. Pause. And then pause. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I love once he gets to that 4 chord and he does that beautiful little double stop move, and then he just lets it sit there. He just lets us feel it. And I love taking that pause. It's very, very gratifying as a player for some reason. Hear that? And no one else in the band fills that spot, right? The pedal steel player doesn't do anything. There's fiddle on this. No fiddle. Just rhythm section just keeps cruising, just holding. And they give him that space. And he actually sets up kind of a question. And then it gets a response. Then one last thing. Beautiful stuff. Think about this when you're learning, when you're trying to stretch out and soloing. Maybe you have a backing track on YouTube, or maybe if you still have Fender Play, then using backing tracks there, and you're playing over a simple progression. Just think in those phrases, call and response we've talked about before. In this case, he starts with the melody of the song, so it's not like he's stuck for an idea. If you get stuck for an idea for your solo, just play the melody. Why not? Just figure out where the melody is and just noodle around until you see it. By the way, the melody is probably going to be some notes from the chord that's going on at time. So make a case that this B natural is the only note that isn't in the A major triad, because it isn't, but it is in the scale, and that's what the guy's singing. Do something off that. You could even slide. Little vibrato, little fancy stuff there. And thank you so much, Eric. That's very, very kind of you. I've seen that Rare Guitars clip with her a few times in my feed now too. Yes, she's great on that thing. I mean, what a great gig, right? God, I wonder if she'll have me sit in for that. I mean, I let her sit here next to Dylan. It's awfully quiet. Some of Rex's hair is on my microphone. Sorry, it's a little distracting. Anyway, so stay tuned for that. We'll see you next week here at this Bat channel, and with our guest Angela Petrelli. I'm going to take a brief pause, have a glass of water, and then I'll see some of you in the workshop for the developing guitarist. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. Come back, watch this as a bit of a tutorial on how to play the guitar solo to Neon Moon. It's an easy lesson there. Good luck to you. All right, I'm going to go to the still shot as we get out of here. Actually, I don't even know how to end this show. Hey, Dylan, how do you turn this crazy thing off, huh?